If you take a look around at the podcasting industry, it is no secret that things are changing. The way that listeners discover podcasts is changing. The way that podcasts are being distributed and accessed is changing. The way that we as podcast hosts create the content we're here to create is changing. And so the expectations that listeners are bringing to our shows are changing right along with it. And that's exactly why I've invited 5 of my dear friends, people who live and breathe inside this industry every single day, to share their predictions for you on the future of podcasting. From the actual shifts that are happening right now to what these mean for your show as we head into a brand new era within the podcasting world. Because if you've got a message to share and you're serious about getting that message in front of as many people as possible far and wide around the globe, then you are exactly who this next era is built for. Welcome to Insider Secrets to a Top 100 podcast. I'm your host, Courtney Elmer. Let's make your business binge-worthy. Now, before we look ahead to what is coming down the pike in podcasting, or is it pipe, potato, whatever, we need to talk about the way the ground is shifting underneath us right now within the podcasting landscape. And that starts with podcast discovery, because the way that listeners find new shows is changing fast. 10 years ago, listeners didn't find shows the way they're finding them now. 5 years ago, listeners didn't find shows the way they're finding them now. And that changes everything about how you and I need to be thinking about growing our shows. So I asked Jennifer Hahn, the CMO at OSHA, what she sees coming for the future of podcasting.
I'm Jennifer Hahn, CMO at OSHA, the first platform dedicated to podcast audience growth. Not sure if you caught this, but back in September 2025, Apple rolled out a major update to Apple Podcasts. And yes, they added great features, but the real signal was how the redesign gave search its own button, placed all the way to the right under the thumb. A clearer emphasis and a design that simply makes you want to use it more. And it matches what we've been seeing for years, because 70% of listeners discover new shows in-app through search. And that's how people express what they want, by typing their question, their topic, or their need. So what should hosts focus on next? Well, start by moving away from just producing episodes, sending them out into millions of shows and other episodes, and crossing your fingers that people will somehow find you. The challenge isn't publishing anymore. It's becoming findable by the audience already interested in your topic. And listeners reveal their intent with keywords. Your job is to make sure the right ones appears in your episode notes, to choose the keywords with real search volume so you can reach more people, and position your show high enough in the results to appear in the listener's click and listen zone, ideally outranking your direct competitors. Search optimization used to be an early adopter mindset, but in a year ahead, it will become the norm. And the hosts who will adapt now will lead the next wave of organic podcast growth.
So, with this macro shift of podcast discovery through search becoming more and more front and center, the next question you need to be thinking about is, well, how are the podcast platforms playing a role in podcast discovery going forward? Are they playing a role in podcast discovery going forward? Because in the past, they really haven't played much of a role, but that's changing. Sure, word of mouth is how your grandma might have discovered a podcast way back in the day. And of course, people are still going to talk to each other about the podcast that they love. But do platforms like Apple and Spotify and YouTube have a say-so now in what shows they're putting in a listener's feed? Because search is only one side of the equation. And if discovery through search is on the rise, well, guess what's the next natural domino? To give us some clarity on that, here's Alex Sanfilippo, the founder of Podmatch, with some good news for creators.
I'm seeing a new trend starting to happen in podcasting, but specifically on the actual podcast players. So take Spotify, Apple, Amazon, YouTube, those type of player applications. And what I'm noticing is the algorithm, the rise of the algorithm in podcasting. Now, for many people that are in podcasting and have been in it for a long time, we've kind of looked at this as maybe a negative thing that could happen. It's something we've dreaded in many ways, but I actually think it can be very positive. Because as it stands right now, if you go to any of the podcast listening apps, again, the Apple, Spotify's of the world, you only see the same handful of podcasts, right? The most popular ones. We have potential to change that now with an algorithm, because an algorithm doesn't just show you the most popular shows, it shows you ones that you'd be interested in. And the whole thing will work based off this idea of how engaging is the content. So an algorithm will rank a podcast based how long people stay engaged and listen to it. And for all of us, that means if we create really good content that listeners want to consume from start to finish, we're going to rank really high in this algorithm, and it could be a huge win for each and every one of us. So for me, the rise of the algorithm in podcasting is be a really great thing for many of us to capitalize on.
And if the listening platforms are going to be rewarding shows that are keeping listeners glued from beginning to end, then guess what becomes really important? You got it. Mastering the craft of podcasting. Because if engagement is becoming the new currency, and if your ability to hold a listener's attention becomes the thing that determines your visibility, then the hosts who craft the tightest, most compelling episodes are going to see the biggest wins. Here's Tom Rossi from Buzzsprout with why he believes we're about to see audio-first content make a major comeback.
Hey, Courtney, this is Tom Rossi. Thanks for asking my opinion of what I think we're going to see happen in the next year. I think what we'll see is a resurgence of focus on audio-first podcasting. In the last year and a half, I feel like there's been so much emphasis pushing podcasters to do video, and I think they're going to start to see a limited return on an incredible investment that's necessary to be able to create all that video. So the implication for podcast hosts is that we are going to go back to creating compelling, high-quality audio content. It doesn't mean that video is going to go away. It's still going to be valuable. It's going to be valuable for discovery. It's going to be valuable for promotion, but it's not going to be the primary consumption format. So we'll see a return to somewhat of sanity of what we're investing in creating our content and doubling down on the strengths of storytelling and just creating compelling audio content.
Gosh, Tom, I really hope you're right, because that would be amazing news for creators like me who don't enjoy the added pressure of doing video. But there's another factor that none of us can ignore as the podcasting landscape continues to shift. And it's something we've seen happening a lot lately, which is this permeation of AI-generated content inside of the podcasting apps. So to break down what's really at stake here for creators, for advertisers, and for listeners, here's Ellie Puckett, CEO of Resonate Recordings.
Hi, my name is Ellie Puckett, and I am the CEO of Resonate Recordings. One of the biggest shifts in podcasting right now is the potential rise of mass-produced, AI-generated shows. And while AI is an incredible tool for creators, this flood of content could create a real discovery problem. The humans putting in the work risk getting buried beneath content factories. Podcast is built on trust. Listeners form real relationships with hosts. That trust is exactly why advertisers pour billions of dollars into this medium. But if you remove the human host, you remove the trust. Remove the trust, and you jeopardize the dollars that sustain the entire ecosystem. So what can you do? We need you to advocate and have your listeners advocate for clear lines between human-produced and fully AI-generated content. Pushing the listening platforms to require labeling, filters, and separate rankings. Because we can't wait until the trust has already begun to decline. We need to protect the creators and listeners now.
Yes, and this is such an important point because trust is the living, breathing backbone of this entire industry. Trust is the reason that listeners listen to you in the first place. And it's also the reason that creators like you and I have more monetization options than ever before. Because when listeners feel connected to you, they are far more willing to support the work that you do in some way, which opens the door for new and creative ways that podcasters can earn money without relying on traditional ads of old. And if anyone has their finger on the pulse of what's actually working in the monetization space right now, it's Lauren Passell. And here's the direction that she sees podcasters moving in the months ahead.
Hi, my name is Lauren Passell. I'm the founder of Tink Media, a podcast growth company, and I write Podcast, the newsletter, Discovery newsletter. And, one thing I'm seeing is podcasters, especially indie podcasters, coming up with really creative ways to monetize. And I absolutely love it. A lot of them are using Patreon. Anything that gets people away from the CPM model, in my opinion, is good. So seeing more of that, seeing people need to come up with bonus content, and sometimes we're seeing maybe there's, a regular episode once a week on the main feed, but then there's a preview of the bonus content on the main feed as well. But you have to pay to get the rest, right? So an emphasis on bonus content is good. I'm just hoping that the bonus content starts getting better and better, and it's not seen as like throwaway content, but that podcasters start really putting a lot of emphasis into creative ways that they can provide listeners with cool stuff with that bonus content. And so that us listeners will give them more money and help them keep doing what they love doing.
And amen to that, because think about it. When you zoom out, all of these perspectives point to a very clear theme that is emerging in the podcasting space. Podcasting is not getting too competitive. It's easy to think that. We see new shows on the horizon every day. We see shows rising to fame every day. We see people talking more and more about podcasts every day. But the reality is, podcasting is not getting more competitive, it's getting smarter. And the hosts who adapt early are going to be the ones that listeners find in their feed, the ones that algorithms reward, and most importantly, the ones that brands are going to want to work with and support, and that listeners are going to want to support as we move forward into this new era in podcasting. But that evolution does not stop with discovery. It does not stop with creating content. It does not stop with new ways to monetize. It also shows up in how podcasts are structured behind the scenes too, which brings me to a topic that a lot of podcasters misunderstand, and that is podcast networks. Because there is this outdated old idea floating around out there right now that if you just quote unquote get picked up by a network, your show is suddenly going to take off. And that's not quite how networks work. So in the next episode, we're going to break down what a podcast network actually is, what it isn't, and what you should be looking for to find out if partnering with a network now or in the future is right for your show. That's all coming up next to help you make your business binge-worthy.